Thank you, David. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as David says, I'm here to talk about some of the developments and enhancements we've been working on in Scotland. Transport Scotland, of course, is the national transport agency for Scotland. We deliver the Minister's main capital investment programme for road and rail. We're also responsible for all transport policy and for managing and maintaining the trunk road network, amongst other things. For my part, I work in the Trunk Road and Bus Operations Directorate, and I have a responsibility there for asset management, planning, finance, technical standards, and also now moving forward procurement of our trunk road maintenance contracts. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, I'm going to sort of focus, as I said, on some of the more recent enhancements that we've been working on in Scotland, and in doing so cover three areas. One is our fourth generation trunk road contracts, which we've recently announced our intentions there in terms of awarding those contracts. I'll talk about some of our asset management enhancements, an area that's important to me, and also, if I've got time, a brief update on where we are with the National Road Maintenance Review. So a few basic stats on the strategic network which we're responsible for. 3,400 kilometres of trunk route, about 15% of which is motorway, 15% is dual, and about 70%, the majority, being single carriageways. A lot of structures on the network, 2,000 odd bridges, various other structures. An asset value, gross asset value of 18 billion, making it the single most valuable asset in financial terms which Scottish ministers are responsible for. And some information there on the traffic flows in the network. It's only about 6% of the Scottish road network, but carries 37% of all vehicular traffic and 60% of HGV traffic. Quite a diverse range of routes. Traffic flows ranging from less than 10,000 vehicles a day to upwards of 170,000 vehicles a day on the more busier stretches of our Central Scotland motorway network. And in terms of how we manage that network, as shown on the map there, we split it up into 4 geographical regions, quite simply: northwest, southwest, northeast and southeast, each of which, in terms of management and maintenance, is covered by 4 trunk road operating company contracts, now about to move into the fourth generation. So in terms of who does what, well, Transport Scotland are in effect the asset owner, directly accountable to Scottish ministers. We are responsible, obviously, for the strategic network management, financing the management and maintenance, developing the contracts and procuring those contracts, and administering the contracts which delivers the maintenance on the ground. Management and maintenance on the ground is delivered by the 4 trunk road operating company contracts, who provide a full service in terms of professional services and delivery of cyclic and routine maintenance, and also an element of capital maintenance as well. Just on that, in terms of capital maintenance, one distinct feature is that for works contracts on capital maintenance with an estimated value of greater than 350,000, that's looking forward into 4G, those contracts go out to discrete tenders, so that's not work that's done as of right by the operating companies. It gives the rest of the supply chain the chance to bid for some of the bigger works. And an important feature there, you'll see that we have a performance audit group. We employ a performance audit group to monitor, audit and report on the activities of the operating companies. Most of that reporting is done directly to Transport Scotland and the management teams that we have in there, but a key part of it is also public reporting. There is an annual public report which PAG produce. So the 4G contracts, I mean, much of what I'm going to say initially is about the Tranche 1 contracts, which are due to start on the ground in April of next year. We've just recently announced the outcome of the tender process for the Tranche 1 contracts, and that covers the west of the country, northwest and southwest. These contracts have been an evolution, if you like, from day one, when we had our 1G contracts in the mid-90s, and we've been driving out efficiencies through the various iterations of those contracts. So it's been about not revolution, but evolution. And as I said, we've driven out efficiencies, and we hope to do the same again with the fourth generation contracts. The base contract period is still 5 years, as it has been in the past, but we've introduced more flexibility in terms of extensions going forward. Base period is 5 years. We have an initial potential for 2-year extensions, and then 1 year over and above that, up to a maximum of 10. And that's really to give us more flexibility in terms of convergence of contracts, which I'll maybe explain about going forward. That first extension, the 2-year extension, we're looking to do that, consider that in year 3, and that's really to incentivise good performance in the early years of the contract. We have in previous contracts seen performance dip off at the start of new contracts, and that's even where we've had incumbents in place. So an incentive there, and also that's built in year 3 to give that sort of certainty looking forward for the operators as well. So in terms of the contract evolutions themselves, I've mentioned the extensions already. We have consolidated quite significantly the rates and prices in those contracts. It's a bill of quantities type of contract, and you'll see there that we've reduced the number of rates and prices from 27,000, which is obviously quite vast, consolidated into 2,500 items, which, apart from anything else in terms of financial systems, makes the operation of those contracts much more efficient. For the first time, we've introduced mobilisation items into the contracts. Haven't had pricing of mobilisation specifically in there before. That's something which I should point out is capped at a particular level, so it's not something where a lot of front loading can take place, but it does give an element of pricing, transparency on pricing for mobilisation. I mentioned the schedule of rates and prices. A lot of the work is delivered to specific items and is valued using the schedule of rates. But a key element of the contract is also there's a significant amount of monthly lump sums in there for certain activities, most of the routine and cyclic activities in actual fact being monthly lump sums. And in 4G we've expanded that a bit by including repair of defects in actual fact is now a monthly lump sum and incident response for some more of the minor incidents. And we've been able to do that because over a period of time with these contracts we've got a lot more knowledge and data going back the way of specifically Cat 1 defects, for example, and incident response. So we've now specified those as monthly lump sums. And certain of those monthly lump sums, particularly more of the cyclic and routine type activities, there is now payment is linked to performance, so there are payment adjustment factors in the contract for some of those activities. Some of the evolutions have been linked more to the strategic objectives of the agency, particularly in terms of better journey times and more reliable journey times. So we've written certain enhancements into the contract, for example, defined roles for journey time reliability coordinator and incident liaison officers, etc., and also a more robust process for disruption management, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And obviously sustainable delivery, that's pretty much a key driver for us all. So there are new targets written into the contract and KPIs, and indeed a carbon calculator which is used in the value management process for prioritising our capital maintenance schemes. I mentioned that the improvement in these contracts, the development of these contracts has been about continuous improvement. And one current theme, which is probably familiar to most of us, is collaboration and sharing of services. That's somewhere where we're expecting to see a significant increase in the pace in the use of sharing of services and collaboration. A lot of that increase in the pace and driving that forward has come out of the National Road Maintenance Review in Scotland, which I'll come back to at the end. The other thing we've written into the contracts for the first time is community benefits to align with sort of latest procurement practice and that ability to support the supply chain and SMEs particularly and sort of focus on that kind of localism agenda, if you like. So that's new to the contracts as well. Much of what I just mentioned has been more about the Tranche 1 contracts. Tranche 2 that's for the contracts in the east of Scotland. They're coming along a year later, so the delivery of these contracts on the ground is staggered. Tranche 2 is due to start on the ground in April 2014, so we're currently reviewing what we're doing again in terms of developing those contracts to see what further changes we might want to make to 4G in Tranche 2. Some of those things, some of those areas that we're revisiting at the moment is, to a certain extent, the risk transfer, some of the risk transfer that's in those contracts, particularly around damage to Crown property, as one example, where for damage that's more the kind of smaller scale damage to Crown property on the network, where in Tranche 1 we've kind of sold that risk, if you like, for damage below 10,000, individual damage below 10,000 in value is now a lump sum within the contract. So there's been a risk transfer there. So we're going to review the thresholds there, and also the threshold I mentioned about for as of right work. We'll have a look at that as well, at what point we want to trigger the tendering to third parties for capital maintenance. We'll look to trial outcome specifications. That's something we're looking at the moment, is what elements of the contract we might want to transfer over to a more outcome-based specification, similar to a lot of what you might see in the Highways Agency contracts. So it's not a wholesale shift to an outcome-based specification. As I mentioned, it's about evolution, so it's something we'll maybe look to trial in Tranche 2, particularly around the routine and cyclic activities. Maybe take a more KPI performance-based approach to extensions. Up till now, we've been extending the contracts. It's largely just been based on a value for money case. But going forward, we would want to link that more strongly to performance on the contracts. We'll look at our evaluation criteria for the contracts, and also the potential to introduce some more flexibility into those contracts through the potential use of frameworks, category management, which the HA have moved forward with, and we'll also look at how we procure and pay for professional services within those contracts. So that's the contracts themselves, but the other key thing for me is asset management. That's one of my direct areas of responsibility. We have, over a 3 to 4 year period, the past 3 to 4 year period, been undertaking an asset management improvement programme. That initial programme is now complete, and we are procuring the next phase of asset management programme based on a recent gap analysis. But we found that programme, the one that's been delivered, it's made significant improvements in the way we work, and introduced new value for money. So I'm just going to sort of quickly run through some of the enhancements that we've developed through that programme and which we've incorporated into the 4G contracts. One key one is our integrated road information system. That's our asset management IT-based system, which is effectively the management tool for everything we do. It holds all our asset data, all our asset information. It includes the various functions which many of you will be familiar with, like pavement management systems and structures management systems, financial management systems, etc. We had a previous system called CERIS. It was the Scottish Executive Road Information System. It was a well-developed system, and a lot of innovation was brought through that. But it didn't quite provide in all areas the level of service that we liked. So we moved to procure from the market a new integrated system. And in doing so, a key part of that, given the synergies that we have with some of the systems that the Welsh Government have, and indeed synergies with the network, the type of network and traffic flows, we have entered into a collaborative arrangement with the Welsh Government and run a collaborative procurement there. And a key point there is that over the life of this commission, this is a 7-year commission for IRIS, we've generated between 3 and 4 million of savings based on what we were spending on CERIS. And I should also point out that contract includes all our machine-based road condition surveys. Now that contract, IRIS, is currently in its mobilisation phase. It's pretty much through its mobilisation phase in actual fact. It's currently undergoing acceptance testing for the various functions. There is a staged delivery there. I mean, a lot of it is key. A lot of these systems are key to our operating company contracts, so we'll be rolling Iris out with tranche 1 of 4G, as I said, which starts in April of next year. So the next activity, now that we know that our intention to award the contracts, we can now start the implementation and training around the new system. It's staged, so we've picked out there the kind of top 10 functions, if you like, which are the main ones in an asset management system, which are important to both ourselves and our supply chain, the operating companies that they will rely on. They've been prioritised as early deliverables to meet 4G. And they, as I said, are the typical ones I've already mentioned, like covering pavements and structures, financial management system, which is a new one for us. In our previous operating company contracts, the financial management system has been priced for and provided by the operating companies, meaning that in total we can have up to 4 different financial management systems, which our own people internally need to manage. So this will bring an element of consistency, will bring total consistency across ultimately all 4 units when they're all re-tendered, to have one system provided by the client. We've pretty much overhauled quite a lot of our data collection requirements in the contracts, particularly in relation to ancillary assets. A lot of what we previously specified in the contracts has now been incorporated in new manuals and guidance, which are referred to in the contracts, particularly around the collection and updating of inventory, the inspection requirements on the network. There's now more comprehensive guidance for that, aimed at bringing more consistency across all units. And there's a new requirement, and this is more in relation to ancillary assets. There's a new requirement to gather condition information for all ancillary assets. So I'm talking about barriers and signs and lighting, etc. Good condition information on the carriageway up till now, but not so much on ancillary assets, and you'll see why in a minute that it's important for us to collect condition information. On ancillary assets, we've developed a new decision support tool. It's essentially a network level investment planning tool, which we've not previously really had for ancillary assets. And that's why the collection of condition information is important. What we are asking in, in the contracts is for condition data to be gathered on an A to E scale basis, with A being virtually your nearly new asset, and E being in essence an asset that is at the end of its useful life. So over a period of time with gathering this data, what we will do is build up a picture of the condition and state of all assets on the network, all ancillary assets on the network. And that with the decision support tool we've got, that will enable us to do longer term investment planning and give us a clearer idea of where we need to invest on the network. As I say, we've always been able to do that for the carriageway, for road pavements, but less so for ancillary assets. So should drive out efficiencies and get better value for money for what we're actually spending there. And a key point about that is the robustness of that will build up over time, because the deterioration of those assets won't be based on some sort of assumption, whether that's a straight line over a period of years or whatever. It will be based on an actual rate of deterioration, which we'll be able to track through the system. That covered the ancillary assets side of things. We've also introduced a new value management process for the capital maintenance, the structural maintenance. And that's a new objective process which helps the engineers, the operating companies, to generate prioritised lists of schemes, which is no longer simply just based on the condition of the carriageway. It brings into consideration a range of other factors, again aimed at improving value for money. And it's a relatively simple process. It's not something which is an undue burden when it comes to developing these capital maintenance programmes. We have, to a certain extent, automated it as much as we can. we've automated it by introducing scoring criteria and spreadsheets. So this is where the kind of wider priorities come into play. As I say, it's not just about condition. We've introduced 4 new criteria, being safety, journey time reliability, environmental sustainability, and value for money. Now you see that condition is not mentioned there at all, road condition. The starting point for this process is the condition information that comes out of the pavement management system. So from your pavement management system, you get your list of schemes, which are already justified in terms of condition. But what this process does, it brings in these other factors, which are weighted criteria, value for money and safety having the highest weighting, and then journey time reliability and environmental sustainability fourth in terms of the criteria. There's spreadsheet tools provided, which largely automates the process. Operating companies put in certain data, like on the safety, for example, it looks at, for any given scheme, it will look at texture information and accident rates. You put that data in, and the spreadsheet generates the safety score for you. On journey time reliability, it looks at the frequency of reactive maintenance that's been undertaken on a certain section of route, the occurrence of defects such as potholes, etc., all of which can affect journey time reliability. So data like that goes into the scoring spreadsheet. The spreadsheet calculates the score for you, and ultimately overall gives an overall scheme score, taking into account these various criteria and the condition which has already been assessed. So it gives you a better value prioritised list, if you like. It is automated, as I say, but for the bigger schemes, it doesn't replace the need for formal value management workshops, which is something undertaken on a bigger scale. And finally, on asset management enhancements, disruption risk. I mentioned earlier about enhancements to the contract which bring in better management of disruption on the network. We've had well-developed processes for managing landslides, for example. We've done a lot of work in the past on risk assessment and management plans for landslides. But this is more, in the operating company contracts, this is more about the day-to-day type of disruption that happens on the network, particularly, for example, flooding is a key one. So through this risk-based approach and the collection of new data through the contract in terms of where incidents are happening, we can build up a picture of higher risk sites. And we then have a disruption risk assessment tool which then enables prioritisation of those sites. So those sites which are more regularly susceptible to disruption on the network, there's a robust evidence-based process behind that which can support bids for work in those areas to address those areas of risk and deal with them in a prioritised basis. So that's a few of our asset management enhancements. As I say, we've got a new procurement going forward to develop, to do investigation and research in various other areas across, not just road maintenance, but we're looking to sort of widen the scope of that asset management commission, look to develop new enhancements which, if delivered in time, can go into the Tranche 2 4G contracts, but ultimately potentially 5G contracts in several years' time. So finally, I just want to give a brief overview of where we are with the National Road Maintenance Review in Scotland. Some of you might have heard of this through I've talked about this at length before in other presentations. So it's just sort of very quickly to give you an update on where we are. I mean, essentially, in a nutshell, I'm not going to go back over the ground of the review, but essentially the review started in February 2011, and phase 1 was largely about evidence gathering evidence on current practice, gathering evidence on examples of best practice and innovation, and doing stakeholder engagement, which completed last summer. Phase 2 of the roads review, it was more about, further to that, stakeholder engagement and gathering of evidence was about generating options or products, as you might hear with the HMEP. We've developed a number of options. There were 30 in total were identified in phase 2 of the roads review, and a specific piece of work in phase 2 was some research work on the economic impacts of taking money out of road maintenance. So that, turning it round the other way, very useful report worth looking at on our website. That was very much about building up the funding case or demonstrating the benefits of investing in road maintenance. A very useful piece of work, and our Minister often uses the strapline on for every pound that you invest in road maintenance, you get a £1.50 benefit for the wider economy of Scotland, and that's based on the research and data that we looked at. So a very useful piece of work, and that was in phase 2. Phase 3 was completed just recently this summer, and the final report published, and that was about implementation of those options, plus a specific piece of work. I mentioned 30 options. Option 30 itself was about reviewing the structure of how road maintenance services in Scotland are delivered. And I should say that this review was not just about trunk roads. In fact, it was quite largely about local authority roads as well. So it was the whole road sector in Scotland, all 32 roads authorities, local roads authorities plus ourselves as the trunk road authority. So it covered the whole service. As I said, we're currently in the implementation phase of those options. I'll come back to option 30 in a minute. The other 29 options are being progressed at the moment, and that's just an example of some of the things that are ongoing just now. Continued funding of the Scots ramp project, that's the Scottish local authorities. They have a combined ramp project, so there's continued funding there and development there, particularly, for example, the production of a consistent suite of KPIs for local authorities. They've now got right across all 32 Scottish local authorities, they've got a consistent suite of KPIs. That now enables them to produce annual reports on asset management progress, for example, and that enables all 32 authorities, specifically on asset management, largely, to compare progress. So it's not about the whole delivery of transport services, it's about specifically focusing on the asset management delivery. Options around reviewing standards, we've commissioned some research there. There are some lean pilot projects getting up and running, specifically in Dumfries and Galloway Council and in Aberdeenshire. We have set up a Scottish Road Research Board, and that's really about promoting innovation and sharing of products, reducing duplication in a lot of the research which has been ongoing in Scotland and elsewhere, to try and sort of disseminate a lot of information there, as I say, and drive out duplication. Option 30, I mentioned option 30, that was a specific piece of work in phase 3 of the review, where we commissioned a small group led by a senior local authority official, a recently retired local authority official, to do a high-level appraisal of how the maintenance service in Scotland is delivered across all authorities. So it looked at various iterations of horizontal and vertical integration, with a starting point of the status quo was not sustainable. So it looked at identifying where benefits could be driven by looking at how the service was set up. Essentially, the outcome of that is that the sharing of services and collaboration is being promoted in the short to medium term. And depending on how successful that is, then option 30 would be revisited to look at the potential for structural change in how roads authorities are set up. So the initial focus is on sharing of services and collaboration. And to drive that forward, new governance arrangements have been set up. And this is the one important thing for me in all of this is that there's been a lot of talk in the past about collaboration and sharing of services, but it's never really been fully embraced and moved forward, certainly in Scotland. And what we've done through the Roads Review is that we've got the buy-in at the top. So we've set up a new strategic action group which will oversee the collaboration development, and that will be chaired by the Minister, and recognising the local political agenda. It will be co-led with COSLA as well in Scotland. So it will be a COSLA, not necessarily a COSLA leader, but certainly a COSLA spokesperson will be involved in that. And that strategic action group, as I said, chaired by the Minister and COSLA, will meet twice a year with a stakeholder group sitting below that, led by Scots on the local authority side to drive forward these initiatives that have come out of the roads review, and develop new ones as well, and provide advice to the strategic action group. That kind of just shows how the governance is set up. You'll see there the strategic action group at the top. So, as I mentioned, with the ministerial lead there, I think that's what's going to make sure that the pace of change happens, because the whole roads community is required to report through that group to the Minister and COSLA. So there'll be an incentive there certainly to ensure that we're seen to be collaborating and sharing services better. And another key finding was that there would be an improvement board and a programme support office for that service sharing arrangement. So that's the kind of central resource, if you like, which will support roads authorities by providing them with the resource, with business cases, toolkits, whatever it is. So there is a central resource there to support change. And the research board, which I already mentioned, will feed into that, and a communications group to disseminate the information. So that's really pretty much a whistle-stop tour of a number of the enhancements and developments that we've got in Scotland. This is about as much as I could fit in.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Donald.